go. So you can kind of see everybody.
Yep, looks good.
All right, so say hey to Matt, everyone, live from New York City.
Doing? It's nice to talk to you guys. Of course, it would have been fun to be there in person, but I was just out for WordCamp LA a couple weeks ago and had a great time. So I'm back to talk to you a little bit about what it's like to deal with contracts and the relationships they have with the work that you do as a small company. So for some background, I'm one of the co-founders of Valley Interactive. We are a full-service digital agency. We're based in New York, but we have employees around the country and some people out there in the Los Angeles area. We started out as just basically me and the other co-founder freelancing. So I've been through negotiating contracts as a very small operation, and I've been through more recently negotiating contracts with very large companies like News Corporation, the Time Inc., and the Brookings Institution, and very large organizations that can have very complicated contractual requirements. So I want to make sure I leave some time for you guys to ask questions about this, because you probably have a lot of ideas that you want to ask about that are specific to your situation. So I'm just going to go through a couple of points that I came up with that I think are really important best practices for anyone, whether you're a single individual freelancing or whether you're a growing company with employees. I think this advice sort of applies to everyone. So my first suggestion is to find a lawyer and keep that lawyer around as your general counsel. That is by far the most important piece of advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a developer. Everything I'm about to say is based on being on the client side of negotiating contracts. So nothing I'm saying here should be taken as legal advice whatsoever, because I'm not qualified to give that. But a lawyer definitely is. And you're really never too small to have actual professional legal help, as opposed to just finding a contract template on the internet and using something like that, which I definitely did for a long time before I really got serious about it. And I can say that that's one mistake that I definitely that's definitely something that I think was a mistake. I should have actually done the work to get a lawyer to work with me to develop contracts. So finding a lawyer is a little like finding a therapist. I assume you guys in California probably are all seeing therapists, right? So it's a joke. But when you're trying to find a therapist, you really have to kind of make the rounds and find one that is a good fit for your personality and really sort of understands what specific issues you're dealing with, or so I'm told. And that's a similar thing for lawyers. And specifically, the kind of lawyer you'd want to find is someone who knows how to negotiate contracts, consulting contracts for small businesses. There's plenty of lawyers out there. Probably the best source for finding one that would work for you is to just rely on your peers and your network and other folks who've been in similar situations as you. I mean, meetups like the one you're at right now are a great place to discover connections like that. That's how we found ours, and we've had the same attorney for several years, and it's been a really great fit for us. And the other thing is, people think of lawyers as being very expensive. They are fairly expensive by the hour, but for example, we have a template contract that we send out to almost every client that we start working with, and then invite them to mark it up and change it. And the most part, if you were able to find one who was willing to work with you on this, you could have a contract that was pretty simple that you could reuse in a lot of situations. So it wouldn't necessarily be a big investment of hours that you were spending with a lawyer every time to negotiate a contract. So that's my upfront advice, is to get competent legal help that is specific to your business, instead of just relying on resources that you find on the internet, even though, if you truly don't have the money for it, then you don't have the money for it. But you probably, if you find a good match for you from a lawyer, you probably will be able to work out some kind of pricing situation that works for you, hopefully. There's a lot of attorneys out there who are very sympathetic to the type of industry that we're in, and the type of work that a lot of us are doing as small businesses or freelancers. So moving on from that, the important thing is that when you're doing contract work for a client, when you're doing development work, design work, or any kind of consulting work, it's really important to have a contract, a signed contract describing what's going to happen in the relationship, even if you feel like it's a very trustworthy client that you've had a relationship with and you really doubt that the relationship you have professionally now is going to go south. It still never hurts to have a contract. As my attorney always tells me whenever I dismiss his concerns like this, he says everyone is friends until they're not. And then once they're not, that's when you really need to rely on the like actual written agreement that you made. And you know, it's definitely sort of like not like the fun part of the beginning of a relationship to have to negotiate a contract, which is why it's good to have lawyers do it for you, so you don't have to deal with the like the nitty gritty details. But for the most part, it's really important to always have a contract and to agree on terms explicitly and in writing before you start work, especially if you're starting work before you've gotten any actual money from the client. And really a good contract is one that both sides have had the opportunity to negotiate on and have really provided feedback on, and where one side isn't sort of like forced into taking or accepting the terms of the contract without being able to discuss them and propose changes. Contracts really hold up best in an actual court or arbitration proceeding if they've been negotiated on, and it wasn't one side that was like, oh, I didn't know it was in there, I didn't read it. That really complicates things. Definitely, everyone involved should read it and have a chance to provide feedback, and that's a really fair negotiation where everyone feels like they got a good deal, and you want to walk away from that interaction with your clients feeling like everyone got is getting terms for the relationship that they feel comfortable with and feel happy about. Right, now I want to just walk you through the anatomy of one of these contracts a little bit, not like word for word, just kind of the general idea behind what we do. What we do with our clients is we have two different pieces of paper that they sign. One is called the Master Services Agreement, or the MSA, and that outlines the general rules for the whole relationship between us and the client, and it has a bunch of different sections in it that detail things like the types of interactions and responsibilities that we owe to each other. The other piece of paper that we have them sign is the Statement of Work, or SOW. That actually gets into the specific details about what this project is about, what work we're doing for them, whether we're charging them by the hour or on a fixed cost basis, and what our rates are, what the time scale is for how we're going to deliver the software, what the time frame is for when they pay us the money, just details like that. So the MSA is kind of like the constitution that describes the framework, and then the SOW is like the legislation that describes the actual like day-to-day of what's going on. If you're doing a very small engagement and you're doing just like a one-off thing that's going to last a short amount of time, you could sort of combine these two ideas into one. So one that has the rules and one that has the details, and put them together in one piece of paper. A lot of times what we do is we'll have an ongoing relationship with a client where we're going to do multiple projects with them. So there's some master services agreements that have had like 6 different statements of work attached to them over time with that client. That's good. You want to have that kind of long-term relationship with a client usually. So it's good to have, the ability to create new distinct projects with their own parameters that are all governed by the terms of the original master services agreement. Now, again, these are sort of things that your lawyer would go through with you. But the things that are typically in an MSA, there's a lot of like boilerplate stuff that's pretty routine that is nothing that's really worth talking about. But there's a couple of little things that are actually pretty important that I just want to highlight for you. One of those is what they call the acceptance clause, and I think that's actually one of the most important, because what that governs is what are the terms under which a client can come back and say this work was no good, it didn't fulfill the terms of the contract. And a typical acceptance clause for us is like the client has 15 days or 30 days after we've delivered something to say, this isn't up to the spec. We have to change something. And as long they have it in writing, like, we reported the problem, that was the deal. If they come back 2 years later and they're like, you were supposed to have done this thing and you have to fix it now, that's a tough situation to be in. You don't want to be on the hook for that kind of stuff. So that's the importance of an acceptance clause. Two other things that come up a lot: indemnity and warranty. So indemnity is does the client have the right to sue you or come after you legally if they get sued and they think that they got sued because of something that you did? If they think your work was defective, they got in trouble, can they come back after you for it, or is that not allowed? They have to deal with the consequences on their own. And similarly, like warranty, probably you're familiar with warranties from cars or electronics you bought or something. It's like, how long after it's been delivered are you required to fix things that were not identified originally? So all of those clauses are kind of related, that they describe, like, what are the terms under which you're off the hook if they claim something went wrong. Like, they claim it went wrong the day after it launched, probably you're on the hook. If they claim it went wrong 2 years after it launched, it's harder to be on the hook then. So, those are the actual details of those terms are something you're going to have to negotiate individually with the client. And usually they're going to want stuff like that, especially bigger clients with more strict legal requirements. They're going to want stuff like that. So you have to decide what you're comfortable with. Two other fun things that come up in MSAs, the legal jurisdiction where the contract happens. If you're working with a client that's in the same state that you are, probably there's no discussion about this. If you're residing in a state, if you're in California and I'm in New York, and we decide to do a project together, we have to decide, is the contract going to be written according to the laws of New York or California? And subsequently, if we have to sue each other, where do we have to go to court? So if you're working with a client that's far away and they say we want the arbitration or the lawsuit to be here, if it comes to that, then remember that you're going to have to go to that state and find a lawyer who's allowed to practice in that state to represent you, and it's going to add a lot of complications to what you're doing. Sometimes clients demand it, and there's really nothing you can do about it. We let clients have that sometimes. Usually, if they're a big enough fish, and we feel like we have to. So it's just something that comes up. And lastly, the ownership of the intellectual property. This is pretty important because it defines at what point you transfer the work that you did, the intellectual property you created, to the client. Usually you want to say it's only yours once you fully pay for it. So if they don't pay for it, you could say, well, you're not allowed to just use the work because you haven't paid for it. It's not yours. So that's another important thing to have there. And that's also, it's actually can be very tough to find a lawyer who really understands the GPL, which comes up a lot when you're working with WordPress and you're making derivative works of the GPL, which themselves have certain legal obligations under the GPL. I couldn't tell you, it's very complicated. I wouldn't even want to comment. And a couple of things that come up in statements of work, which is the other piece of paper that you sign. Fixed cost versus hourly. This is pretty important because especially this is something you want to agree on ahead of time. Sort of like if you get in a taxi cab or an Uber or something, it's like whether the trip is going to be based on the meter or whether you're going to agree on a fare ahead of time no matter what happens with traffic or weather or what. This is, and again, something that tends to just have to be negotiated. Sometimes clients really demand a fixed cost, which is usually better for the clients. Sometimes they're okay with just billing hourly, which is usually better for the vendors. Not always, but that's usually how it works. And then the statement of work also usually covers the rates, that you're charging for the project, covers the timeline you're going to deploy it on. And sometimes, like, we've had clients who want to put in like a penalty clause where we have to forego a certain amount of the final payment if it's late according to a certain date. That sort of thing might come up. And then, of course, the most fun part of the statement of work is the payment terms. When do you get paid? Do you get paid a deposit up front? Do you get paid on a fixed time schedule? Or do you get paid only when you deliver certain pieces of code? So those are all things that'll come up in the statement of work. So those are the main points I wanted to cover. Get a lawyer, always have a contract, and make sure that you've covered the important bases. Make sure that the contracts you're negotiating really protect you and protect the solvency of your business and protect you from some bizarre legal challenges that a unruly or unscrupulous client might bring against you. So that was my spiel. I'm happy to answer any questions or bounce any ideas off you guys, or have you bounce ideas off me if you're interested. So.
Thank you, Matt. So
my pleasure.
I'm going to have to relay your questions to Matt to make sure that he can hear them clearly. So, questions? Yes, sir. Fill in the blank template type contracts. How do you feel about that? Is that valuable, or should always do a lawyer? Okay. So So the question was, what about fill-in-the-blank type contracts, boilerplate type things that you can find? What do you feel about those, and should it always, always, always be a lawyer?
Well, I will admit to having inked contracts that were never evaluated by a lawyer. I think that the fill in the blanks contracts you can get on the internet are they're not dangerous or like concerning in what they have in them. It's what they don't have in them usually. So like a couple, and what I just mentioned right now is by no means a comprehensive list of all the things you should be looking at and dealing with in a contract. Um, but sometimes you might get a really simple contract off the internet that's missing some important protection that you might be able to otherwise get a client to agree to. So, I mean, I would say, like, if it's all possible, you should get an attorney involved. It might be that you can have an attorney either spend like half an hour evaluating a contract that you got from the internet to say this is cool or like this is cool but add these two paragraphs, and then that could become your boilerplate that you can reuse because you know it works for what you're trying to do and the way your business is structured. So as long as you've gotten like at least some review of it, then as long as you've had like some professional opinion on it, then yeah, you could definitely use a boilerplate contract you get off the internet if it seems reasonable.
We've got a question over here. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, what kind of lawyer are we looking for? I mean, do they have a new specialty name that goes after them? Do they specify themselves as contract lawyers for the internet world, or?
Okay. So the question was, what type of lawyer, kind of in general terms, would we be looking for? Is there kind of a name of a lawyer that we can do a Yelp search for and try to track that person down?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the type of law that you're looking for would sometimes be called small business law or general contracts law. You're like the type of lawyer you're looking for is someone who probably is not at all like a litigator, like never gets involved in court cases or lawsuits. What they're mostly doing is business transactions. Our lawyer, the lawyer that we work with, for example, his previous like lawyer job was like dealing with large M&A and corporate bankruptcy cases, and when he burned out on that, he thought it would be more fun to mostly work with small businesses and startups and kind of work through their issues. But what you're looking for is a lawyer who's got experience with internal business mechanics more so than like courtroom experience, or then there's lawyers who do like real estate or like wills and trusts and stuff. What you're looking for is like small business and contracts. So you can look through there. I think there's a lot of lawyers, especially in big metro areas like LA or like in New York, and certainly in the Bay Area, where they're actively interested in working with people in the tech world and will sort of market themselves that way. So I think for the most part that I would look for that type of attorney first, because they're probably already very tuned into a lot of the sort of things that you're doing. But again, you really need to like figure out how to develop a personal relationship with one who's got like an understanding of the kind of business you're trying to do. And it's hard to know, but like hopefully you can get there when you get there.
Does that answer that? Okay. Next. 3,000 miles away. Got somebody that knows everything in the world about contracts. Yes, sir.
Are the acceptance clauses included in the same? Are the acceptance clauses included in the same contracts, or should we accept the same?
Okay. So the question was the acceptance clauses. Are they included in the same contract, so the SOW kind of thing, or is that something that's on its own?
Usually that's in the master services agreement, because it's like a procedure that would apply to any work that you're doing with this client. Usually, with the way the statement of work is structured, is it can supersede anything that's in the master services agreement. Like you might say that there's a certain rate structure in the master services agreement, and the statement of works is going to offer them a special discount because they're going to like prepay for some part of the project. Whatever. You can do that. You can say like this modifies certain terms of the master services agreement. So if there was some reason why special rules applied to this SOW compared to others that you had done or would do, then you can definitely put that in there. But generally, we want like a very consistent, set of rules for that, and we tend to put it in the master services agreement instead of the statement of work.
So how long is your typical master of service agreement and your typical SOW in pages, just out of curiosity?
The master services agreement is about 6 pages. We don't really believe in like very like Byzantine structures for contracts. We've had some clients send us, they're like, we want to start with our form for it instead of yours, so they'll send us one that's like 30 pages. We've gotten that. Usually it's like big nonprofits with very like strict regulations about how they spend their money and like what type of vendors they can work with. We've gotten master services agreements from like very, very large publishing companies that are like 3 pages. So it kind of depends on the organizational culture of who's producing it. Ours is pretty lean. I mean, I think that it doesn't need to be unreadable legalese. It can, like, our contract is something that any reasonably intelligent adult could read and understand, I think, and that's good. I mean, it's still like legally valid and has all the protections we need, but you want to be able to like look at it in a year and say like, oh yeah, this is, we need to answer this question about what's going on. We need to go back and read the contract. And if I can't even read my own contract without my lawyer telling me what's going on, that's probably not good. So this will be written pretty plain English and not feel like dramatically long. So that's what I recommend directing your attorney to do. And that's what ours is like.
Other questions? Yes, sir. Specifically in the contracts and what those feelings. Okay. Do you include arbitration clauses in your contracts? And what's your feeling on arbitration clauses?
That's like contracts 201 level stuff. So the difference between the difference between an arbitration clause and like not having an arbitration clause is the question of if there's a dispute about the contract, do both parties agree up front that when they get to that point of having a dispute, they're going to have it resolved by a private arbitrator rather than filing a lawsuit in whatever district court is local to the contract? So we like the arbitration proceeding, but that's specifically because our company is located in Manhattan. And you might not know this, but if you want to actually file a lawsuit and go to court in Manhattan, the waiting list to do that is about 4 or 5 years. So because of just the immense amount of commercial contracts cases that are filed in Manhattan. So unless your case is worth like a couple $1 billion, the court's just like, we don't care about this. Get out of here. So if you want to actually like resolve a dispute in Manhattan, you kind of need to have arbitration. I don't know what it's like in LA County, but it's a big place, and court systems are overwhelmed in most big cities. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was a similar situation where it's like kind of hard to get the attention of a court if it's like a matter that's too big for small claims, but too small to really like actually seem worthwhile to them. So what the arbitration clause usually requires is that you go to this organization called the American Arbitration Association, and both parties agree to submit the case to an impartial arbitrator who will look at the facts and make a decision that everyone agrees they'll abide by. If anyone's seen the season finale of the most recent season of Silicon Valley, that's what they do instead of going to actual court. I think that can be very useful if your attorney understands how the system works and is able to support you through that. Then is able to support you through actually filing an arbitration request if you need to. I think that's pretty helpful. So yeah, I recommend it if you're in a jurisdiction where getting a court date is hard, or if like the court system is a pain to deal with, which they are in most heavily populated areas.
Is arbitration cheaper in general?
I think that it's probably cheaper overall, yeah, because you're going to have to pay your attorney for probably less time to go through it. An actual court lawsuit will probably require a lot of different actions, and in some cases, it actually is supremely unlikely that a case that someone in our world would file would actually go to court. The odds that it would be settled before that are just very, very high, because no one actually thinks the amount of money required to go to court is worth it for the amount of money that we're working for, no matter how big a company you're talking about here. So, but still, like any kind of like formal lawsuit, there's a lot of steps involved. There's a lot of attorney action that's going to happen, and you might even have to hire like an extra litigator attorney to work with your attorney. And then you're really talking about big money. So, you know, the filing fees for arbitration and the fact that your contract lawyer can probably get you through an arbitration proceeding without a lot of extra legal special stuff probably would make it cheaper. Fortunately, I've never been very far into either a lawsuit or an arbitration proceeding, so I couldn't tell you firsthand, but I suspect that arbitration would be cheaper.
Other questions? I've got another one for you, Matt.
All right, sure.
When you met your lawyer, was there something that he said or that you said that made you guys instantly a match for one another? Is there a phraseology that WordPressy, you know, small business owners should be looking for in our line of work that a lawyer really understands us?
Yeah, I think like what gave me the impression that he really understood what we were doing is that he had a lot of questions. But this was at the time we started working with him. We have 45 employees now. We had, I think, 15 or so at the time we started working with him. So we were a much smaller company and dealing with a lot of like growth issues that, you know, are interesting to talk about, but it's a whole other spiel. He really he had a lot of questions about how is the business structured, how is what are the typical relationships we have with clients. All the questions he asked. At the time, I was very ignorant about this stuff. I had no idea what I was talking about. So the amount of information he was able to just give me up front about what we need to do to protect ourselves and to you know, structure things in a more responsible way. It was clear that he immediately understood from what I was saying what I was trying to do and could extrapolate legally what needed to happen in a way that I would not have been able to come up with at all. So, you know, if you get that feeling, like the lawyer's like, oh, I get it, here's what we need to do. That's good. If they're like, if what they say makes you feel like they don't get what you're trying to do, or they don't understand how your business works, or what they said doesn't seem that much smarter than what you would have come up with, that's not good. They should seem a lot smarter than you about legal stuff, because they should be. So. And I knew for a fact, this guy was actually recommended by a client of ours that we had parted with on very amicable terms, and they had been like, hey, and we had mentioned to them that we were looking for a general counsel attorney, and they're like, oh, you should talk to our guy. And, you know, so it was a personal referral from a source that we trusted too, which I think is also very helpful if you can get one, if you're able to.
Yes, sir.
Any advice on modification and redistribution of WordPress themes and plugins?
From a copyright standpoint? Or? So do you have any information you can provide about kind of copyright for redistribution of themes? I think that kind of falls into the GPL stuff you were mentioning, and how that ties into small websites and you know, brochure consumer facing sites. Yeah?
Sure. So, I mean, you know, in fairness, what Ali produces generally is we make themes, but we make a very bespoke theme that really only intended for use privately on one client site. I think that and again, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you for sure exactly how this works, but the general public license implies that if you're going to release a derivative work of something that's licensed under the GPL, your work also has to be released under the GPL. How a WordPress theme fits into that framework legally, I understand is something of a controversial debate that people are on both sides of. Personally, I kind of come down on the fact that it's obviously a derivative work. If I was doing that, I'd probably release it under the GPL. The GPL doesn't preclude you from selling the work commercially. It just requires you to release that work under the GPL. It doesn't preclude you from collecting money for it. Although it's a little awkward if you're also giving away the source code for something, because it's, you know, it's hard to both sell something and give away the source code. People do it, you know. There's an honor system kind of thing is one way you could construct that. And then, you know, then there's the Red Hat model where you give it away, but then you provide consulting support for it, or people are welcome to download it and have at it themselves. But I think that I would say that trying to, like, the question of whether it's legally correct to just keep the source completely closed after you've made it work its derivative of WordPress, I'm not sure if it is. If you've written code that's completely orthogonal and doesn't use anything from WordPress, maybe there's more of a rationale for it being acceptable to have it be completely closed source. But just the nature of way web applications work, where you can't compile it into a binary and distribute the binary. Like when Adobe used to sell Photoshop on a CD, they'd have the source code at the Adobe headquarters, and they'd compile Mac OS application and sell it in a store to you. And there was no way you could recover the source code from that. But web applications, to be able to use them at all, you have to have the source code because it's a interpreted rather than compiled thing. So, I guess my answer is I don't really like. It seems like there's an unsettled legal dispute about it or debate about it, and I feel like I would err on the side of being like more GPL than less GPL. But again, that's just my opinion, and I'm not even a lawyer, so.
Got a chicken and the egg question for you.
Okay.
What comes first, the business plan or the lawyer?
Oh, definitely the business plan.
Okay.
You can come up with a business plan that's like, I think I'm going to be able to earn money to support a business by doing this service. And then once you're like, that's what I'm going to start doing, and you have like the work lined up, you have the resources lined up, and you get to the point of needing to hammer out details of a legal nature, then you can bring the lawyers in. You can, get part of the way in the process of starting a business without doing that, for sure. And that's what we did. And I think that's what most people do. So it's like a thing you get to shortly after you start the business for the most part. Although there's the hassle of like incorporating the company and setting up all the tax structures you need to do, but a lot of that is like, you can kind of just do online at this point. So.
It's getting. Oh yes, sir. We'll do.
They think are good for the subject, websites or whatever.
Do you have any references you could share with us? Links that we could post to the Meetup group that would give some additional background on some of the things you've been mentioning?
I'm trying to think. Not particularly. I'll try to come up with something. I can definitely post like my very brief notes on there. I could send my notes to you if you wanted to post them. They're just a couple of bullet points, but I'm happy to do that.
I think it's a lot of anecdotal, experiential type stuff.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. A lot of this is like because the thing is, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Everyone needs a solution that's very specific to what they're doing. Although a lot of us are doing similar things, but only you know exactly what works for your needs.
So it's getting late in New York. We'll do one more question.
Cool.
Anyway, or we'll not do one more question. Matt. Thank you for staying up with us. We really appreciate it.
Definitely a lot. So hopefully I could meet some of you in person at a future event. So
thanks, sir.
All right.
Have a great
Have
night.
a good night, everyone.